Okay, I'm not going to keep our keynote waiting, so we're going to get started. So I have the great pleasure and honor of introducing our keynote, and Caitlin, where is Caitlin? I want her to change the slide. Give her a minute. 1 second. The thing about these bios with these speakers and the people that we've invited today is that they don't do these people the justice they deserve. These are amazing, amazing human beings who are doing really important work, and this is just a little bit of what we can tell you about this person that you're going to hear from today. So Michalyn Steele, Professor Steele, who was my professor when I was in law school, graduated from Georgetown Law School. She has been at BYU Law since 2011, beginning as a distinguished practitioner in residence, followed by a fellowship before becoming an associate professor in 2019. She was advanced to the rank of professor in 2019. She began her duties as an associate dean for research and academic affairs in 2021. And in 2022, Professor Steele was named the Marion G. Romney Professor of Law. She teaches constitutional law, civil rights, federal Indian law, and law and leadership. After beginning her legal career in a highly regarded DC firm specializing in the representation of Indian tribes, Professor Steele worked for 6 years as a trial attorney in the U.S. Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division's Housing and Civil Enforcement section, where her work was honored with multiple division awards. Beginning in late 2009, Professor Steele worked as a counselor to the Assistant Secretary of Interior for Indian Affairs, Larry Echo Hawk. She holds her BA and MA in Humanities from BYU with an emphasis in English literature and Native American studies. And this January, she will be teaching at Harvard Law School. Professor Steele is amazing. You're all very lucky to get to hear from her. Let's welcome her.
That may have raised your expectations a little higher than I can meet, so let's just bring that down a little bit. I often teach in this room, and I always have to lower the... Can you hear me okay? Sometimes the acoustics in this room aren't great. What a pleasure to be with you, and I really applaud you for being here and taking the steps to get yourselves prepared to explore a career in law. And you're doing the right things. You're meeting people. You're networking. I loved seeing the networking that happened with the panel up here. You're gathering information, and that is all great. I'm here today in large part because my mom decided to go to law school. She decided to go to law school when I was 10. We were living in Western New York. I'm from a small tribe that still persists in New York State. There are a bunch of tribes in New York State, not sure if you knew that, but I'm from the Seneca Nation. We have territory that is near Buffalo, New York, and near Niagara Falls. You could always come to the territory, but I recommend it be the summertime when we have lots of strawberries and not the winter time when we have 10 feet of snow. But that's where I grew up, and my mother decided she wanted to go to law school. And so both my parents are graduates of BYU. They met here at BYU. So she applied to BYU Law. My dad's job was such that he couldn't quite leave it yet. And so my mom and my brother and sister and I packed up, said goodbye to everybody, my grandma and all the people on the reservation there, and we moved to Utah. A couple of weeks into that experience, my mom knew that something wasn't right. She regretted that we were living apart from my dad. The plan was he would come out here every few weeks with his job, but she felt she didn't feel comfortable having us separated in that way. And so she did something that I just think is so courageous. She said, "This isn't working. We're going back. We'll do this again," when my dad's job allowed him to come with us. I think about showing back up on the reservation after the big goodbye and good luck parties, farewell, look at you going to law school, and to turn around and have to say the timing wasn't right on that, right? And to be back and not mind what anybody had to say about it, but to know that she still wanted to reach her goal, but that she would need to do it in a little different timing. So, and I really give credit to one of the associate deans here at BYU who told her when she said, "I think this isn't right," told her, "That's fine, come back when you're ready." And so she did. We moved when my dad could leave his job and transition out here to Utah 2 years later. So when I was 12, our family moved out here and moved to Orem. I went to Orem Junior High, and my mom went to law school. And there were many days when I came here to the law school and looked into the classrooms and things and watched what they were doing. And when she graduated, my dad is from Idaho. When she graduated, our family moved to Idaho. And she has had, she's retired now, but she had a marvelous career. She did law school somehow with 3 kids. She somehow made it so the burdens of that were not really felt by us. I remember her having great big earmuffs on, we weren't in the era of noise canceling headphones. It was just earmuffs so that she could sit at the table and study. She dedicated her career to working with tribes in the Intermountain West. She became a tribal judge, and she helped many tribes build up their justice systems. So I admired her career very much, but I didn't think I was going to go to law school. I was more like a humanities person. You may have heard Haiti say, I don't know, not necessarily worth reminding you, but I graduated from BYU with a degree in humanities, a bachelor's degree, and then a master's degree. And my plan was, I'm going to go do a PhD somewhere in a couple years, but I'm sick of school. I'm really sick of Provo, and I need to go somewhere else for a little while. So as I was finishing, what do you do with a degree in humanities, right? I knew I could write, I could read, I could think, I could communicate. And so I thought maybe, I was interested in public policy. I was interested in living in the Washington, D.C. area. And so I went to the BYU, whatever they called it, the placement office, the people that are supposed to help you, career development office, whatever it was, for the university. And I thought, well, I'll just get some ideas about what I might do with my master's degree in humanities and how I might pursue a career in public policy. And so I went in there and met with a gentleman who I'm sure was well-meaning. But the more I talked about public policy, he kept steering me toward, he just kept saying, I know that the Secret Service is interested in recruiting what he said was like Pacific Islanders and Native Americans. So he kept trying to steer me toward the Secret Service. And that didn't seem like me at all. this probably goes back before many of you were born, but it would have involved, in my mind, going to high school with Chelsea Clinton or something, you know, and I was like, I'm not really the law enforcement type, you know, like the Eagles on the move or, you know, whatever. Not that there's anything wrong with it, just wasn't me. But I got the sense that he wasn't seeing past sort of the label that he saw there. And I kept saying, like public policy, or, you know, maybe I could work at the Department of Interior, or maybe I could, you know, whatever. I was doing the brainstorming that I hoped he would help me do. As I was leaving, I sort of thought this was wasted time and useless. As I was leaving, I saw on a corkboard an announcement pinned up, and it said that the Senate Judiciary Committee was hiring. And I thought, well, that sounds really interesting. And I said to him, what, you know, as we're walking out, he's walking me to the door, what's this? What do you think about that? And he said, well, those are really hard jobs to get, he said. I'm sure they are. But I had the thought, you don't get a job you don't apply for very often. They're not going to just call me randomly. So I had to ask him if I could get a copy of that announcement. And I did something that was a little bit uncharacteristic of me then. I hope it is more characteristic of me now. I applied for the job. You know, a hard job to get. You know, I applied for the job. I got a call. Said, "We see your application. We'd like to meet with you." At this point, Senator Hatch from Utah was on the Judiciary Committee, and the slot had been allotted to his office to hire. And so I got called to an interview in Salt Lake City with Senator Hatch's office. And when I got there, everyone was dressed in nice suits. I thought I dressed nice, but I didn't have a suit, you know, and there was the men had briefcases, and just sitting in the waiting area, I was like, this isn't me. What am I doing here? This is silly. And I almost left, but I decided to at least go into the interview, not flake on the interview that they had invited me for. And I went in, and just the pressure sort of fell off, and I was just myself in the interview. I was talking with the person who was doing the hiring. I was myself. She was asking me about my life experience, and I was sharing about my life experience. And she said, as we left, she's like, "Thank you for coming in. Great to meet you." I had seen how many people were in the waiting area, and I was like, well, so there was that, right? Chalk it up to experience. Then I was on the reservation in New York visiting my grandma, and I got a call, "Can you come to D.C. And meet with the Judiciary Committee people?" Well, it was summertime. I had, jeans and T-shirts. So I said to my grandma, "I guess I'm going to D.C. to do this interview, and we need to go to the mall and get me something to wear." It was, I remember it was a Monday morning. My grandma woke me up. When she had us visit, she set up a cot at the foot of her bed. And so I was sleeping, like a kid in her room. And all of a sudden, when my eyes opened, she's leaning over me and she says, "Let's go to the mall." And I'm like, "Well, it's not even open yet, Grandma." But we were there to open the mall. And this is, if you remember nothing else, don't let your grandma pick out a suit for you. Now look back on it, I had the weirdest, funniest suit. Huge shoulder pads. It was very bright red. Anyway, but there I was in my suit down in D.C. not the picture of DC sophistication that you might think would show up at the Senate for a job interview. But I went in, and these things are political. It is not against the law for politicians, office holders, to ask who you voted for, etc. So this is in 1994, I guess. President Clinton was the president, but you may remember that Senator Hatch was a staunch Republican. So the first person I meet with there is his chief of staff, a great lady named Wendy Higginbotham, and kind of an intimidating lady. I go in, and if we sit down, and she says, "Who'd you vote for in the last presidential election?" And I was like, "Oh, this wasn't worth buying the suit." I had voted for Bill Clinton, and 1994, Bill Clinton was extremely unpopular. The Democrats lost all kinds of ground in 1994 because of the unpopularity of President Clinton. Anyway, so I was like, well, I voted for Bill Clinton. I thought this was going to be short. But she went on to ask, did I understand that this position would essentially be staffing Senator Hatch on the Judiciary Committee. Now, he had lots of lawyers who staffed him on the Judiciary Committee, but this particular position, I hadn't gone to law school or anything, did I understand that, his views were the ones that count at the Senate, and could I be supportive of that? And I felt at that time that I could. She said, you understand that, the voters of Utah elected Senator Hatch, and what he wants to do is what we do. I said, I understand that. And so even though I had begun the interview saying I voted for Bill Clinton, which was like saying I voted for the devil, which I noticed was one of the options on this year's ballot. No, I did not. I mean that. No, on our presidential ballot in Utah, there was Lucifer. Yeah. So anyway, you thought that was a double entendre, didn't you? I won't deny, but I didn't mean it. But anyway, so Wendy said to me, I like you, right? No reason for that. She just said, I like you. And she took me over to meet all the people on the Senate Judiciary staff. And then suddenly I found myself, I had to buy more than my bright red suit. Suddenly I found myself living in Washington, D.C., working at the Senate. With my master's degree, answering phones sometimes, writing constituent letters. Thank you for your views about, meeting with constituents. The thing was, one of the reasons I was interested to do that job, even though I wasn't politically aligned with Senator Hatch, he had a seat on the Indian Affairs Committee. And I was interested in those issues, and I got to, as they came to trust me, I got to do more work. They put more assignments into my hands, and I got to work with the Indian Affairs Committee on a number of important issues. I got to have a front row seat at the Judiciary Committee, which at that time included the confirmation hearings of Justice Breyer and all the way that federal judges are nominated and confirmed, and a lot of really interesting issues. I wasn't important. I wasn't a main character on that stage at all, but I was learning and taking it all in. I was gaining experiences and friends and perspective. One day I was at a meeting for the Indian Affairs Committee on an issue that I cared very much about and that I knew something about because I had worked in the summers with my mom's law practice. And so in this meeting where everyone else was a lawyer, I said something, tried to contribute to the conversation. The conversation stopped. And everyone turned at the table. It was a long table in a Senate meeting room. Everyone turned and looked at me and they said, "Are you a lawyer?" I said, "No." And then they went back to their conversation. Sorry, we're like that sometimes. So anyway, I left that meeting and I said, I guess I'll go to law school, which hadn't been the plan. But you never know what the next step is. It's what Gordon Smith, the former dean of the law school, used to call the adjacent possible. Once I walked through that door of having the audacity to apply for the Senate Judiciary Committee, having the audacity to show up at a Republican's office having voted for Bill Clinton, and then making myself a valued part of that team, then I had options that were never available to me before. Not that law school wasn't available to me, but now I had a different purpose, a different motivation. I did it really dumb. Do not do this. You're not doing this. You're doing it really smart. You're getting information. I was just like, hey, I'm done working here. I'm just going to go to law school. I asked somebody, where should I go to law school in D.C.? By that time, I'd been living there for a few years. I had friends there. I didn't want to move. I did not particularly study for the LSAT. Don't do that. That's bad. I just sort of thought, well, if I don't make it this year, I'll try again next year and do it a different way. But I sort of went on a wing and a prayer, and it worked out for me. But that was not the smart way to do it. I know you'll take LSAT classes, and you're doing all the right things. You'll know to take the LSAT another time if you didn't get a score that you like, so that you can get admission and scholarships and things like that, because you'll have been advised that the LSAT really matters for some dumb reason. The LSAT does not correlate to how you will do in law school. However, it does correlate to how we predict you'll do on the bar exam. And so it is a metric that is helpful for law schools. And I advise you to do your very best on that. Do as I say, not as I did. Some of these experiences helped me to learn an important principle that I really want you to remember from today. You may have heard the phrase about a bird's wings being clipped, right? And here's what the internet, the interwebs, Google says about clipping a bird's wings. The purpose of clipping a bird's wings is not to prevent flight completely, but to ensure the bird is unable to achieve or sustain upward flight, preventing escape and unwanted roaming and exposure to dangerous situations. So it's a controversial thing, but some people mean well when they clip a bird's wings so they can't fly very high or very far. What I want you to remember today is, don't you be the one to clip your wings. Other people will try. Other people will underestimate you. Other people have underestimated me my whole career. And whatever combination of your background and what is ever unique about you, whatever sort of labels people may want to slap on you that may make it easier for them to underestimate you, apply for the job. Apply for the law school. Do your best. Make yourself valuable wherever you land. Even if you hate it, make yourself valuable there until you get to the next thing. But don't you be the one to clip your own wings. Don't you listen to the guy who says, oh, those jobs are really hard to get. Law school, that's really hard. Like, everybody's so smart there. And I will take one little quibble with what Haiti said about the panelists you'll hear from today being amazing people. I'm sure they are. I'm ordinary, right? I just do the work. I just dare, right? And partly that's because my mom dared, and so that seemed like something that our family did. You might not have a mom or a dad who dared, but they believe in you. And even if they don't, you have the audacity of hope, as President Obama said, right? You dare to dream, and don't say, oh, I've got to lower that dream in order not to soar, right? In order so that other people are comfortable with what I'm looking to do. Well, I'll say it this way first. I told you we have a small reservation in Western New York. And often when I tell people that, they say, there's Indians or there's Native Americans in New York. And my grandma used to say to me, you know, we're not supposed to be here. And I knew what she meant. She meant we're stubborn. We did not get pushed off our land. And I'm not critiquing tribes that were forcibly removed. But somehow the Seneca were stubborn enough that we still have not very much land, but we have land in New York. We're not supposed to be here. She meant they didn't expect we would survive this, and we did. It was her way of telling me to defy expectations. So dream big, don't clip your wings, defy expectations. Don't set President Bush, for Bush Jr., I guess, or George W., for all of the things you might quibble with his presidency. He did have a principle that I really liked, that he talked about the bigotry of low expectations. Other people might have low expectations of you because of your background or whatever. And what I'm saying is, because I'm Seneca, because I have ancestry that was determined to survive even attempted genocide, that background is in many ways my superpower, right? It is not some obstacle that I need to overcome. It is not my background as a Native American woman or as a religious minority is not some obstacle that I have to overcome. It is among the gifts and powers that I have. Draw strength from it. You're the reason those ancestors survived and persevered and got your family to America or got you in a position where you can think about going to law school and sitting at the levers of power. Once you get that credential, then you're sitting in that room where they're talking about what to do about laws or whatever, and if they all turn to you and say, "Are you a lawyer?" suddenly your voice counts. I'm sure if I were to read your essays for applications to law schools, I'm sure they're great, but if I were to read them, I'll bet most of you have some way of describing that you want to be of service. That's why you want to go to law school. Now, maybe what you really want to do is make a bunch of money and buy a boat, but you probably didn't put that in your application essay. And I would say, I hope you do buy a boat, and I hope you invite me out on the lake sometime. But that is not the purpose of a law degree. The purpose of a law degree is to give you access to where decisions are made, to make you fit as an advocate for others. And I'll say you are not, once you go to law school, I want you to do your best. Don't squander that opportunity. But there are many skills that make a good lawyer, and those are often not reflected in your grades. Some of those certainly are captured by grades, reasoning and legal writing and things like that. Test taking is a skill that gets captured by your grades. But there are so many other important skills that make a good lawyer. And remember that you bring many of those as well. Are you a good listener? Are you a good storyteller? Do you have empathy? Are you a hard worker? Do you have a sense of justice? Are you a problem solver? Can you get along with lots of different kinds of people? Are you a good communicator? All those are very important legal skills that don't get captured by a one-time exam or things like that. So, and those are the skills that you take with you into a job interview and help them see that if they take a chance on you, and this has happened to me again and again, and we're getting short on time, so I won't tell you the other times when I decided not to clip my own wings, to dare to go to the job interview. It happened when I wanted to go work in civil rights. And the Justice Department, I dared to put in an application at the Justice Department, which I had on this lofty pedestal, and I still have, at least for the moment, I have that Justice Department on a lofty pedestal. So that when I went to the first interview in the civil rights, there's several different divisions depending on the laws they enforce. The first one was for Title VII enforcement, employment. And I went in, and it was a room full of guys, and they had like their collars, like their ties loose and their collars unbuttoned, and the guy who was the section chief had his feet on the desk, and he's holding my resume like this, and he's looking at it, not saying anything, and then he kind of tosses it on the desk, and he says, "I'm not seeing the fire in the belly of a litigator here in this resume." And they were such jerks that I was like, I would never want to work here. Like, I don't want to be in this room. I don't want to be with these people. I don't want to work here. But hey, I tried. So then a couple weeks later, when the housing and civil enforcement section called, I almost said no, because I thought, well, DOJ, they're a bunch of arrogant jerks. I'm not going through that again, right? But I thought, well, let it play out. Don't clip my own wings. I'll clip their wings, right? Anyway, so then I get there, and it was great. Like, the lighting was better. It smelled better in that building. The people were my people. Like, I fit in so great. And then pretty soon they called me back, and I had a job doing my dream, which was civil rights. One of the reasons I was interested in civil rights is I had seen the Oprah show one time when they had all these testers go and apply for rental, and the people were turning them away because they were black or whatever. And I was so outraged by that as a young person that I found myself doing that very thing, suing people who were discriminating in housing. It was a great opportunity. I loved it. Now, I never dreamed I could be a law professor. The first time I was associated with BYU, I came out here. The dean at the time sent me to lunch. I noticed the people he sent me to lunch with all graduated #1 in their class, including from Harvard, and all clerked at the Supreme Court. I thought, oh, he's sending me a message that, like, I'm not law professor material. That's what law professors look like. He wasn't. They just happened to be the people who work on hiring, right? And they were fancy. And I have a lot of really fancy colleagues with much fancier degrees and achievements and clerkships and all of that, right? But it didn't mean that I didn't have certain gifts that I could bring to bear that would make both me enjoy being a law professor and make me good at it, even though I didn't have all the credentials. And so I remember saying to the dean, once the process started in earnest about whether I would maybe be a law professor at BYU, what I remember saying to him, and I want this to be true of you, is everywhere I've gone, even if it didn't look like it on paper, people have been glad they took a chance on me. And I'd like to think that's true here at BYU. Professor Augustine Adams, are you glad you took a chance on me? Okay, thank you. And it didn't mean I loved all the jobs I was in. It didn't mean it was every day was satisfying, or that sometimes I didn't wish I didn't have the responsibility of being a lawyer. Now, I went to Georgetown. They don't give scholarships. I had essentially a mortgage for law school. That was dumb, right? It makes sense if you're going to go to New York City and work at big law, but I'm like, oh, I want to represent Indian tribes, right? I want to work in civil rights. Why was I carrying around this huge mortgage? It took me 20 years to pay it off. But it has opened so many doors. I'm not saying do the mortgage. I'm just saying a law degree opens doors for you that were not possible without it. Okay. I think that essentially exhausts the time and then some. So I don't know if do you have time for questions, or are we going to move forward? Happy to move.
I think we're just going to thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Go do great things, guys.